till I get my money right.
Yo, welcome to the Legends Pod. Today's actually a super dope episode for me. Pamela and I are sitting down with my guy, Evan X, who's going to take us behind the scenes of all the Las Vegas nightlife. Evan also is the host of a podcast called Stripped. Make sure you guys go check it out on Instagram. It's stripped.lasvegas, and on all the podcast platforms, it's Stripped Pool Season is the first series. So hope you guys enjoy. Man, so we put this together obviously quick, man, but Pamela, just really quick, a little backstory. So Evan and I were high school rivals back in our heyday. We're old men now, but we used to get after it a little bit back in the day. And then I don't know, Ev, we kind of maybe lost touch for like a little bit, but I feel like it's kind of the cool thing about podcasts is kind of it's like a networking tool, you know what I mean? It kind of brings people back together.
I agree.
Absolutely. It was it's cool though, that kind of like relationship through sports. Even though we were rivals back in the day, I feel like there's like an understanding, or I'm cool with a lot of the people I used to play against.
Yeah.
Just because we all went through the same type of, the same battles.
Yep.
And doing the podcasting thing. How long have you guys been thinking about it? I'm curious. I was really like, you were like, yeah, I'm doing a podcast too. And I was like, oh, it's gonna be jokes for sure.
Like honestly, man, I've had the idea for quite some time. I've just been like a little gun shy on like starting it for a variety of reasons, but probably like a couple months ago, maybe, Pam, like we met for coffee.
Sean Sean asked me about it in like December, right?
Yeah, a little bit ago.
It was like December. And it was always with the intentions that it wasn't going to be right away. It was like we were going to build it in December and just asked me if I would hop on.
Yeah, so I kind of, like I said, I've had this idea for a while. I kind of knew what I wanted to get out of it, but just, didn't have the whole concept dialed in. It was like a total learning process, man. I didn't know there was so much that goes into it. And then,
oh my gosh.
Oh man, it's nuts. And so I met with Pam and I was like, you know what? I kind of have an idea, a vision of what I want to do. And I kind of asked her if she would do it with me, because I think it's kind of cool to get like a male and a female perspective on like a lot of things, especially talking with guests.
Oh, absolutely.
So
that's what I'm here for.
Perfect.
Yeah, it was. And then we just became friends after that. And we like just clicked really well.
Nice.
Yeah, man. That's the little backstory. And then Ev, you were in LA, you went to Boise State, and then you ended up like, tie me in, like, when did you end up in Vegas? Like, because I kind of remember, I kind of don't.
Went to Boise. I had to get an eye surgery in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I had
what kind of eye surgery? That's so casual to just drop and then not explain.
I guess after I had it, I've dealt with it for so long, it's not really that cool of a story. It's the muscles in my eye, they don't work together. So it's called strabismus, and they fold over a muscle in one of your eyes to match the other eye. And it's really painful. I was blind for like a week.
Jeez.
And yeah.
Wait. Is the muscle in your eyelid?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, because I had a surgery in my eye for my eyelid because my muscle didn't form fully in one of my eyelids. So I had a lazy eye, like a semi-lazy eye for years. And then as I got older, it got worse. So I'd have surgery. And they folded over another muscle.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it must be something along those lines. I don't think it was in my eyelid. It was in the back. I remember it being like in the back of my eye. And then when I went to college, they were going to tell me, they said I had to get another one. And then the doctor was like, hey, if I do this, there's a 10 to 15% chance I could overcorrect. And, so just be sure. And I was like, do I have to keep doing this thing? I already did this surgery 2-3 years ago. And she was like, well, I hope not. And that was kind of the end of my football career right there.
Damn.
Went home, came back to LA. I was real heartbroken about that. I was, into my junior season. I thought I was on the way.
Yeah.
But whatever. Go back home. Santa Clarita is a small place. I mean, if you grow up there, it kind of, I felt like it didn't have much to offer me. And I was working at Wells Fargo. I was trying to get into the corporate game.
Yep.
Like, all right, if I'm not playing sports, let me get to the bank. I'll try to work my way up. And then these people kept coming in. I had moved to Reno just to get out of Santa Clarita.
Yep.
Do you remember Brian Loeb?
Sounds really familiar, actually. Yeah.
He was one of those young guns with us on the basketball team at Hart when we were younger, but he had moved to Las Vegas.
Okay.
And for some reason, to make a long story really short, I used to be singing all the time in practice and being annoying and stuff. And he was like, hey, I'm starting this little music thing. You should come down to Las Vegas and just give it a shot. And turns out I could transfer my work down there. So I moved from Reno to Las Vegas, still working Wells Fargo. And everybody that would come into the bank, I shit you not, would come in with like $2,000 or $3,000 in like uncounted money.
Yeah.
And they were wearing sweats, and it's like 2 a.m, 2 p.m. They just roll out of bed, and they're like, "Hey, can you count this?" And I'm like, "What? What? What do you mean?" And so 5, 10, 20 people that are around my age keep coming in and doing this. And finally I lost it. I was like, yo, what does everybody do in this city? How do you guys all have this much money? And one thing led to another. I went to one day club. I thought the club thing was just a nighttime gig. The daytime party was so much more fun. It was a wrap. I quit my job. After I went there, I quit Wells Fargo within like 2 months. And then I got lucky getting into the pools, but man, that was in 2012.
Yep.
I just kept working my way up and working my way around. I ended up getting to move to London to open a club with some friends of mine. Me and my girlfriend got the opportunity to go open a club in London in 2017. And that was incredible. And came
I
back to
just
Vegas.
realized, you're a promoter?
No. I wasn't a promoter.
I got so excited. I love promoters. I love them so much.
Why they have the hardest
them
job?
All I would.
Well, one, you're a girl, so you probably get everything for free when you go to Las Vegas. Anyway, I'm sure promoters they probably love you back.
Yeah.
I started off behind the bar. I didn't really know shit about drinking, and then I was a bar back, and then I saw that like the waitresses and these bussers, they were making so much money, and it was just like extra money that they get to keep. Like if you do a good job, if somebody has a great day partying, right? They spent $50,000. They could tip you 20% of that.
Wow.
Just because.
Yeah, it's so wild, man.
Vegas
Bro,
is like, I'll never understand it.
No, it just
I had the hardest time trying to figure out what was going on.
Yeah.
And then I jumped over to busing, and then I was like, well, this is amazing. You work 3 days a week, and the time that you can build up. I thought it was so crazy. I thought about the podcast about working in Vegas in 2015.
Wow.
Shit.
I just looked at my MacBook and I saw my first video of me trying to like do some bullshit kind of introduction, and I wanted to call it BS reporting, like because I couldn't believe how much bullshit was happening in Las Vegas. There's no way people know what's going down there, like for real.
No, that's why. And I'm gonna get into your podcast here in a minute, but yeah, it's like a whole different world because it's like the people who visit have a certain like outlook and understanding of Vegas, and the people who actually live there in the scene have like a complete 180 like perspective on what Vegas is.
Oh, it's completely different, and you meet the real people. I feel like you meet the real versions of people when they step on that plane. Have you guys ever flown to Vegas?
Oh yeah.
Too many times.
And tell me it's not the most active flight of all time. No matter where you're going, it's never that.
Absolutely. Dude,
Yeah.
the flight attendants, the pilots, like everyone's like lit.
Yeah, exactly. And living there, when you're coming back from like this long red eye from like DC or something, and I'm just trying to go to sleep, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Why is everybody talking? Everybody's excited. There's kids there's people screaming. The flight attendants had their jokes like, welcome to Lost Wages.
Yeah, exactly.
You meet everybody's like real version of themselves. Their wild man comes out. I love that.
No, that's so true, man. So you end up in London. I'm trying to reconnect the dots here. You're doing the stuff in London, because I remember seeing, like, I think through another cool thing about social media, and maybe during a time we kind of lost touch a little bit, I would kind of see you were bouncing around. Like, I just assumed traveling, but I didn't realize there was so much other stuff going on at the time.
That was for work.
Yeah. I had traveled. Fortunately, you work in Vegas. You work the seasons end. They're about March to October, and you have the rest of from November till about February to do whatever you want.
Yep.
Hopefully, you've saved your money.
Yeah.
So I did go traveling for the first time in my life. I think in the past 4 years, been to like 10 or 12 different countries, which is, I never thought I'd be able to do something like that.
Yeah.
The London thing was crazy. That probably I was like, I have to do the podcast now.
Wait, when was London?
London was 2017 and 2018.
Okay, so you were there for a full year.
Yeah, a guest that used to come into, I mean, not really a guest of like any specific club, probably the highest spenders in the city. There's like a group of guys, like 5 of them, and at any time they could spend any amount of money, and they do it every night. I was fortunate enough to be serving them one time, and they had a great time. And then I saw them months later, and I wasn't serving them. And one of the main guy had found me. He's like, "Yo, what the fuck are you doing here?" I was like, "I'm just working." And he like put me in this headlock and took me over to the GM, and was like, "Listen, we're having a great time. We love everybody here, but when we're here, we would like to, have Evan as our, one of our servers." And my boss looks at me crazy. He's like, "Well, as long as he doesn't get himself fired,
yeah, exactly.
You guys can have whatever you want." One thing led to another, and like me and this guy and all of these guys, we're still really, really good friends. That was in probably 2015. 2016, I turned 30, or 2017, I turned 30, and I went to London to visit them. And then he was like, "Hey, I'm building a club. We would love your input." And I said, "Well, I'm old, man. I gotta have a real job." And so I was AGM of the club out there, and my girlfriend was the director of marketing. Wow. The club won Best New Club.
Oh.
Yeah. And then there's like a bunch of visa stuff that has to go down. So we just decided to come back. And man, she jumped right back into Marquee. I got a job bartending a little bit off the strip.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, well, if I don't start a podcast about what happens here, somebody else is going to do it. And I will like be upset about it for the rest of my life.
So that's
a long story long.
No, man,
that's such a brilliant idea, because the truth is, you're right. People go to Vegas with this idea of like, this is going to be my weekend. Like, this is it. Like, I'm going to party. I'm going to go to these clubs. I'm going to gamble. Maybe I'll win money. But it's not just that. Well, the beauty about Vegas, for me at least, and why I think a lot of people love it, is you never know who's going to be there. I mean, it brings in so many different walks of life, from people internationally, from people all over, like the States, but also for all different reasons. There's always conventions there. There's always something going on in Vegas, whether it's a festival, a convention. Now there's sports. People go for bachelorette parties, 21st birthdays. Like, it is a monster. Like, Vegas is literally, it births monsters. People go to Vegas and they turn into creatures of the night. And
I wish I could turn that into an intro.
if you're working there. And I've talked to a lot of like the bottle service chicks. Those fucking girls make money. Like the amounts of money that these females are making, and they're dead ass sober. Like they're sober. When I talk to them and I'm not sober, I'm like, can you just take a shot with me? And they're like, no, homie, like I'm buying my parents a house in Hermosa Beach. Yep. And I'm like, wait, what? I live in El Segundo. Like I live in the South Bay. How are you buying your parents a home? These are like $1 million homes. And she's like, yeah. She's like, well, I work my ass off. She's like, I don't party. I don't drink. I come here. I do my job. She's like, I just hustle. And she's like, I moved out here thinking it would be for one summer, and I've lived out here for 7 years. And I was like,
wow. Who is this person? I probably know them.
I forgot her name because obviously I was drunk and I was just partying. I wish I could remember her name. She was so sweet. We ended up knowing mutual people, like knowing mutual friends, because we grew up in like the same little, beach town.
Yeah. That's wild. That's how it works.
Yeah. But she's like, I mean, every experience I've ever had in Vegas, not one is the same. Not one is the same. But I remember talking to her and getting such like and I was like not sober. And I remember that made me pause just to listen about how like she's like, that's not a party area. It's like, it's no longer a party for her. Like Vegas is home. Vegas is where she hustles. Vegas is where she makes money. She has friends. Like it's not the same idea as everyone else who's flying into Vegas or even driving into Vegas. And the stories that I'm sure all of you guys have could be for days. So I think it's so smart that you made a podcast. And I wouldn't be surprised if like throughout the next few months or years, if more come out about it. Vegas has so many dirty little secrets. I'm telling you.
Exactly. They, it's 40 to 50 million people visit every year, right? And so on top of, they're coming to spend money, to have a good time. And just like you said, everybody that leaves Las Vegas, one of these stories that they either can't wait to tell somebody or they do not want to tell anyone, right? And for us, the people that work there, that's every single day, probably 5 to 10 times per day. Somebody talks to you about either the greatest thing that happens to them or the worst thing, or they're just trying to have a good time. And these stories, I honestly, when I'm interviewing guests, I forget. You get jaded by seeing the same thing every day, Yeah. But to other people, they hear the story. I'm like, oh, wow, I forgot that this guy spent $1.2 million that night, or that these people were having sex in the bushes, and then they kept trying to like touch people and throw up and stuff. And then they jumped in the pool so that security couldn't get them. So all these stories. And I'm like, yo, I was there for that. And so it's good to bring them. To me, it's a small network out there. I feel like, just like you said, everybody kind of knows each other. There's not as many industry jobs as you would think for the city being so big. There's maybe a handful of clubs that do the numbers that you have free time and the revenue to do those things, like to buy a house or a car or just to live, however you want. But these girls, like this month, this is May, and Las Vegas is closed right now. They're losing $20,000 to $30,000 this month.
It's so crazy, man. That's what I was actually going to kind of segue into. Obviously with everything that's going on, Vegas, I feel like has just taken like a massive blow.
It relies so much on foreign travel, right? And it kind of goes under the radar as far as how much attention to detail the entire city has to spend on cleanliness and making sure everything operates the right way, because people can bring stuff from anywhere on any given day. So to go without this, especially because summer is kind of on a time clock, May is the busiest month of the year. You got Cinco de Mayo. You normally have a couple of fights. You have Memorial Day weekend, and, kids are doing spring break. It's a great month. And so to not have anything going down at all, I don't even know if the pools will or the clubs will reopen this year.
Wow.
Like, how can they?
Yeah, like even with the reopen,
I don't see that happening when, they haven't even figured out how to have a school year for next year.
Yeah.
There's talks at LA Unified School District. They're not reopening school next year how it should be. For all the school districts in LA, they've been having meetings every week trying to figure out if they're going to be able to do it at all, or will it continue to be online schooling? And that's for kids. There's no way they're going to allow people to go fucking party right now. There's just no way. I'm not going to be surprised when they announce that Coachella is canceled for the year. They have it for October. That's not going to happen. Give me a break. Now you're stage cutting. I'm really upset about both of those, but it's fine.
Yeah, the Olympics.
The Olympics, I heard, got pushed back another year.
Really?
Like to 2022 now, because it's just.
Yeah, well, because they don't think they'll find a virus until 2021. So, or a vaccine. Sorry, I still haven't had. But.
And go ahead.
No, it's just such bizarre times, obviously. But I think if somehow, I tell people this all the time. I think once sports kind of resume, I think it will allow like everyone else to kind of relax and maybe things can kind of get figured out from there. But if I know Vegas has been talked about as potentially being a location for like NBA resuming. Something like that would just be like massive for Vegas in general, I think.
Oh my gosh. Because I think, did you guys hear the mayor of?
Yes.
Oh my Lord. So she basically ruined it for everyone.
Yeah.
Any chance they had of being one of the first to maybe possibly reopen, she kind of just shot down.
I missed it.
And the funny thing is, she's actually the mayor of downtown Las Vegas, not the Strip. She got on Anderson Cooper and he tore her apart with questions. Basically, she said, we want to open back up. We should be allowed to do it. The casino owners should be able to put measures in place to open back up. And then Anderson Cooper asks her, like, under what advice are you advising this? And she's like, I don't know. I don't know casinos. I just think we should be open. And so he ripped her apart on national TV and she made the city look really stupid. And the thing is, she's only in charge of downtown, which is basically like
Fremont.
Yeah, exactly.
Jeez.
So
I love Fremont.
That's gonna be tough. So I work down there.
I love Fremont. Dude, I will beg people, whoever I go to Vegas with, I'm like, can we just do one night off the Strip? Please, I beg you. Fremont is so legit. It's so much more fun, and I feel like it's more old-timey. I don't know. It's like it's a different vibe.
I work at the Downtown Grand.
You work at the Downtown Grand? Isn't that?
There's
they all kind of
pool
blended.
deck up there.
Oh,
I had no idea. Like a pool that's bigger than say Marquee Day Club, but it's just downtown chilling by itself. I had no idea, and I had some really good managers last year, and so I moved to LA. I had been going back and forth from Vegas to LA since about 2016 until the whole London thing. Just because you have 4 days of free time.
Yep.
And I had missed coming back here. I want to do the whole like acting thing.
Yep.
So I was taking classes. And now this year I was like, you know what? I'm moving. I got a job at a bar in Hollywood. And I also have my job in Vegas. They both like kind of agreed to help me work things out. Signed our lease in Hollywood on the 15th of March. And then got laid off the day after. I mean, everybody did, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Literally.
That's crazy though, man. Like, it's just, I feel like in Vegas, and it's kind of the same thing for the podcast thing. I want to get into yours here in a minute, but like the networking opportunities is like so underrated in,
oh my God,
like towns like that. Like it's just, if you're like a people person, I just feel like you thrive. I mean, so many doors can open just from meeting people. So if you're like Vegas hospitality, or like even these like podcasts, like the networking opportunities, even on a small platform, just by meeting people it's like endless.
Right. And it's like a full-time job keeping up.
It is.
I'm like, oh shit, I forgot, you put and I guess it's how people respond well to, or how they respond to things that they like, and that's a good feeling, right? People are like, hey, I like this. And you're like, oh, whoa, I haven't talked to this person in 15 years.
Yeah,
that's cool. And then they know so and so, or in Vegas, bro. I probably saw you out there one time. I'm sure.
I'm sure.
Yeah, right. And that's the thing. All my friends or acquaintances from forever. Whoa, side story real quick. Starting my new job in Los Angeles. I'm working the bar. There's one person sitting at the bar. He looks kind of like, he keeps looking at me funny. He's around my age. He looks familiar. I'm like, I guarantee I know this guy from Vegas, from somewhere. He's like, hey, is your last name Evan? Is your last name Surratt? I'm like, yeah. And I was like, Evan. I was like, dude, you look familiar. Where I know you from? He's like, we went to second grade together in West Virginia.
So we went to second grade.
I was like, what? How do you remember me from that? Like, I moved out of West Virginia over 20 years ago. I've never been back. And the thing is, there's probably only like 6 light-skinned people in the whole state. So he recognized me from there, and he's the Anheuser-Busch rep for Los Angeles. So I've been freaking out. Like, the network thing is like, I can't even believe it. People at my work in Los Angeles have met several people that I grew up with in West Virginia out of nowhere. Like, how does that even happen?
It's so crazy.
It's a small world after all.
And the Vegas thing is it's like compounded, right?
Yeah.
Everybody comes to that one road, that strip. And so I worked MGM. I opened Hakkasan, and then I went all the way down.
Hakkasan.
You like that place?
I love Hakkasan. I for sure must have at some point crossed paths.
Oh,
with you.
You've seen me cleaning up shit, or like with a flashlight in my mouth, or getting pushed by somebody.
I have for sure been there until the lights go on, and you guys are like, you guys got to go. And I'm like, oh, what time is it? What do you mean it's closing? Hakkasan's closing? It isn't closed. I thought the clubs don't close.
That's like the worst time. It's like people refuse to leave at the end.
That's crazy.
I worked almost everywhere on the strip. Like,
Hakkasan has a song. I don't know what it is about Hakkasan. I've always just had the best memories there. I like EDM music, and MGM's like a nice hotel too. I don't know. The last few years, for some reason, it's really gotten me there.
I feel like they do the best service in town, hands down. It's Hakkasan Group. I've worked at all these places. I'm not trying to shit on anyone, but Hakkasan provides the best service. I had the most fun partying at Marquee, Encore Beach Club in the Wynn. It's just like this beautiful, immaculate place. And then when Real World MTV, remember when they were doing their thing, their spring break?
Yeah.
At the Palms Real World. I worked that event.
Oh, yeah.
Man,
yeah, I think
we're going down memory lane now.
Right? Really adding the age.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys remember Real World MTV? Like, oh, Jesus Christ, world. But that was my first real big party. I got hired as a food runner at the Palms. And he was like, hey, we're having a big Real World thing tomorrow. I could use some extra hands. He told me, he's like, you can pass out cheeseburgers or something if you want. And I showed up the next day. It was fucking packed. And then I got promoted that day just from working hard, and then never looked back.
Just like that.
Just like that, man. It's crazy. That's how the city kind of works. If you can get in and show that, you're not there to just try to. Yeah, look, there's pretty girls everywhere. I mean, oh my God. My girlfriend, I met her from working with her, and I used to tell people, I'm like, that girl's fine as fuck. I'm gonna end up talking to her. It sucks because we work together and I don't want to, but I'm gonna end up doing it. And then I waited like a year. And 4.5 years later, here we are.
That's so crazy, man. Some good stuff.
But anyways.
Yeah, so you got all right, so fast forward here now. You're hosting your own podcast. Stripped is the name of the podcast, correct?
Yeah.
pool season.
Strips pool season so far because
yeah,
I can't limit it to just saying like I wanted to talk about Vegas. I didn't know where to start. Like, do you start in the club? Do you start with people that are coming in? Do you start with the people that work there? Do you want to know what it's like to be a guest? Do you need tips on how to get, save some money? Or what's the best angle? And I had like, I think 3 or 4 times even had a co-host ready to go. And we had recorded some episodes and things either fell through or, a couple of times my co-host got bigger and better things coming their way. So they just couldn't do it.
For sure.
And then I didn't want to give up. I'm like, this is going to drive me nuts. And the first people I had reached out to about it were just so excited that I was like, whoa, I thought this had some good energy, but I didn't know that so many people would dig it. And I've only done 6 or 7 interviews. And it's still it's still my baby, but it just feels good to know, like I'm sure you guys feel, to be in the right direction in something, have a lane. Yeah. So pool season is really about just what it's like for people who have never been to Vegas. Like, what is it like to work these jobs? What happens? How do you get in there? Are you special? Do you know somebody? The interview process to get these jobs, which pay these girls upwards of $100,000 to $130,000 a year, is a 30-second process. You wait for 8 hours and you talk to somebody for maybe 30 seconds, and that's how they decide. And out of 12,000 people per venue, they choose maybe 200. Half of them have worked there before. So your chances of being a newbie in the game, it's probably 2%, if that.
Yeah, I actually had 2 girlfriends out here that went to Vegas to interview, and both beautiful girls. Both were servers. One was a bartender for 4 years. They went out there and they said it was a cattle call. They had connections. They had two in spots where they could skip the line or whatever.
Oh, wow.
They were there for 2 days, hours. They were we were standing here for an hour, over an hour. And then even here, when we got to cut the line, we still had this amount of time. And they said, they're we don't know if we're ever going to get it. They're these girls, the girls weren't beautiful. It's not like these girls are hot. I mean, and I'm sure the girls were really pretty. Maybe they were just talking it down, but the girls weren't even that hot. You're for sure the hottest ones, but we don't know. Sure enough, they didn't get it. And I was like, what do you guys think happened? And they're there was just so many girls, and 85% of them, if not more, they were all returners or had gotten callbacks from the last year, and they were coming back for this year. They're there's so many other things that were going on behind the scenes, what we were told. And I was oh fuck, which I could see. These girls work their ass off for, let's say, one pool season. Why wouldn't you bring back a girl who is going to bring you money and going to do a good job?
Yeah, these girls. So that was one big thing I noticed. I'm like, man, some of the prettiest girls, and guys too, prettiest people, are not guaranteed a spot. But you have a girl who last year sold, $890,000 in champagne. Are you going to let her walk, or just for a pretty face? Most of the time, the pretty face people, it's hard work to be in 120 degrees, pretending like you're having the best time of your life in the bikini while people are touching you inappropriately. As the day goes on, they get worse and worse. At 4 p.m. every day, every girl is being asked to be married. Do you have a boyfriend? Where's he at? How come he's not here right now? Can I touch you? They just touch you. It gets wild. And then
all service girl doesn't say anything, right? She just kind of laughs it off. And I stormed up to her and I was like, excuse me. I was like, how do you allow that? I was like, aren't you upset? And she was like, girl, she's like, at some point you just realize it's almost as if it's their way of saying hello. If I look at it any other way, she's like, I can't get mad at every single person who does that, because every single time I work, at a certain point, this is all I get. And I was like, and that's when I realized I don't think I could be a bottle service girl solely for that one reason. They have to put up with so much shit. And
they're wearing nothing.
Smile.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Like thong bikinis and these small little tops, and it's like, oh, now they're inviting problems, and we're feeding them alcohol in the middle of the summer. It's so hot, and
in Vegas, you're told anything goes. Like, you were told anything
exactly.
goes. Vegas, like, anything goes. What happens here stays here. You know, these guys, especially these young fucking fellas, or like guys who never get out of the house because they're fucking wifed up, and this is like their one weekend of freedom. They're drinking, and they're seeing other guys start to do what they do to the bottle service girls. They're gonna follow lead.
Oh, absolutely. And they're not told they can't do anything, right? There's a price for anything, is what you're made to believe. But it's not really true. You shouldn't touch people. Every interview I've had so far, the most disturbing bits are the stories when people are just touching them. Like one waitress, she's like 5 feet tall, and she got picked up by this big sweaty guy. It's gross. It happens to them, but you think they're able to just shrug it off, because at the end of the day, they're going to hand this guy a bill for $27,000, and then he's going to have to tip her and everybody else around her. And so he's going to leave paying maybe $40,000.
Yeah. It's like, how much you willing to put up with?
And if they can breeze through those couple of hours, you work 3 10-hour days, you have 4 other days where you can relax. You don't have to talk to anybody. Yeah. You can go on a vacation. A lot of these people, they go to Mexico and come back. They go on, just to get away from it all.
And the cost of like living in Vegas for a nice like condo, it's a lot more reasonable than living out here.
Yes, it is.
Like I've
like half
at some of those fucking apartments and condos. I'm like, holy shit, they're nice. So even if you do want to stay home for those 3 days that you're off, like you're living comfortably for the amount of money you're making. That's another thing the girl was telling me. She's like, I have a nice ass condo here by myself. And that's like,
oh, and the thing is, those same guys that are smacking butts and all that stuff. So that is one terrible aspect, but you'll turn around and meet his friend and he's like, hey, let me take you shopping. And like, no thanks. You'll genuinely meet people who are just nice and they just want a friend to go walk around with. Yeah. And they'll come back with like I've seen girls come back with $10,000 chips in their hand just from dinner, right? And I'm like, yo, no one's giving me that to go to dinner. Nobody. I don't have the body parts for that. So
it's so true.
In West Hollywood, you might get lucky though.
Yeah. I get all awkward. I'm like,
yeah, exactly. like the awkward
we're just
laugh.
Friends, right? And it was just dinner.
Hey, Evan. So what?
For $10,000, I would.
Yeah, exactly. There's a price for everything. What so a lot of the people that are on your segments, are these guests that like you've worked with, or some of them you just kind of know have mutual friends, or what?
I've worked with some of them. Some are mutual friends. The thing is, I could say one way or another, I probably worked with or around all of them.
Yeah.
Like one of them, she was a go-go dancer at a pool, and I was a barback. We didn't really know each other, but I recognized her. And then years later, we had worked together. There's a waitress that she worked at Chaos, the Palms thing, the catastrophe there.
Yeah.
I never worked with her, but she got hired at the bar I work at in LA because Chaos closed. The Palms, they closed that thing down, keep everybody out. Now she works in LA, and I was like, well, I'm really curious about that spot. I almost worked there. And so she came on. But what I do is I have people, I tell my guests, give them the rundown. I'm like, if you could do me the huge favor and just recommend somebody that you would like to hear a story from, like, who do you think would be good at this? And I'll reach out to them and do the rest. That's kind of how it's grown. And these girls, they all have so many followers. Like that's been really helpful. Social media is a monster, right? So the more people you're in touch with, and all these girls know each other. I thought for sure guys would want to hear the stories about girls in Las Vegas and how crazy it is, the wildness. But most of my listeners, over half my listeners, are women.
They're females, yeah. Oh, I believe it.
Yeah, they just want to know.
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing, man, that I like about your segment that you guys do, it's such an easy listen. Like, not gonna lie, this will make you happy. I went on a walk because my fucking shins all fucked up from running. So
mine too,
dude. Like,
that's why I don't run.
Not to get into it too much, but my shins are like, I've been running like a madman, and I'm getting like bruises on my shins, like from non-impact. So I know something's all jacked up. So I'm like, I'm gonna take a week or two off and just walk because I have to do something. So yesterday, I flew on your podcast while I was walking. But yeah, man, just such an easy listen, and the stories are freaking awesome. But one thing I did not know, I knew nothing about any of the interview processes. So that was.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I was listening. I'm like, oh, damn. Like, I go to Vegas quite often. But like, yeah, I never really thought about that. And I didn't realize like there was so much that goes into it. And people just, like you said earlier, man, just come from all over the world. Really. Yeah. And end up kind of working in that environment. And like Pamela said earlier, like with no intention of ever working there, they just through a conversation,
I think it's a joke,
come back later in time and just reunite kind of with that contact and end up living in Las Vegas.
Seriously, I know I'm very fortunate with the guests that I've been able to interview so far, because these girls, they're like the number one workers at each venue. Like Jerica, Tiana, everywhere they go, they're like really well received. And the next interview I had, the next guest, Lara, she's from Australia. She came over to Las Vegas. She had so much fun at a day club. She's like, how the fuck do I get in here? She figured out how to do it, and the manager said, hey, if you can figure out your visa, then we'll give you a shot. She showed up, she got the job, like hustled. She was a pro tennis player in Australia, came over, hustled, got the job. 3 years later, she was managing the waitresses at bigger venues, and I wanted to know what it was like. We had a really good conversation. Like you said, really easy going, because they have these great stories. I just have to ask one question.
Yeah, totally.
She goes through coming over, getting hired, even what she said, and then she goes through what it's like to be the person hiring, right? To being so nervous standing in front of somebody the first time, and then just in like 4 or 5 years later, she's like, look, I'm the one running the interviews. She used to call me and say, hey, Ev, this guy has your name as a reference. What do you think? And I'm like, oh, he's the man. And then he's hired just like that. Or, nah, I don't think I would do that. I wouldn't put that stress on you as a boss. And then they would go another way. So to tell those stories in the same podcast is pretty interesting. And I'm going to drop it, I think, tomorrow or Sunday. So cool little segue. And when it's your own baby, I mean, like I said, it was 5 years in the thinking of making this podcast. How do I do this? But I didn't think I also, working in Las Vegas, you start telling stories. If people, that's a slippery slope, right? Yeah. You don't want to be giving away secrets that won't get you hired, or that kind of divulge too much information. And, you don't want to embarrass anybody. The thing with the podcast, I just wanted people to come explain themselves, right? They're great people, and they do a really good job at something that I didn't even know existed. So I don't want to trash people about their Las Vegas experience, even though that would be really, really easy to do. So that was kind of what stopped me for a little bit. Like, do I have people come on and speak about, keep it real? Like, I want people to keep it real, but I don't want them to, fear not getting hired or say the wrong thing.
Yep.
So I try to make it like conversational, and if they don't like anything, I tell them like, yo, don't worry, I'll remove anything you don't want to hear. So
I do the same. I do the same thing, man. Well, with that being said, before we let you get back to your hiking,
I'm going kayaking today.
No hiking.
Ooh, switching it up on us. We love it.
What? Give me something crazy, man, or something just in your time in Vegas. Like, what was like the wildest thing you've seen? Which I know is
my God.
But I know you've seen some craziness.
Well, you guys know the AVN, well, the porn awards are the same weekend as the Consumer Electronics. Like, so all the nerds convention is the same time.
Isn't that the biggest?
No, I didn't know that.
Isn't that like the biggest convention, like in Vegas?
Oh my gosh, CES, bro. I was working 1 year at this convention. It's in January, I think. It's not even that like weird of a time. It's so big that now the Wynn, they won't spend money. Like, say the biggest pool party of the year is New Year's. They hire the best talent for New Year's. They skipped New Year's and hired Drake for CES. Paid this guy $2 million just to come perform while those guys are in town, the nerds and the porn people, right? So like the amount of money that's in town for that week. I was serving a table and I walked out to it and I couldn't tell what was it. It was all set up, all weird, like blocked off, and it was a helicopter, like a drone helicopter was sitting in the middle of like where I was supposed to be serving these people. I'm like, what the fuck is this? They're like, yeah, this one CES this year. And I'm like, does it work? They're like, yeah, this was in 2016 that I'm seeing the first flying drone, like helicopter from CES. Might have been, yeah, it had to be 2016 because I was at Marquee. And the amount of money that these guys spent at the end of, like, so CES was done. They put in all their work. They won with this flying drone helicopter thing. The girls that came over there, oh, like a funnel of them. That same night, I'm looking over, all those girls were at this one table with this helicopter. And then they all left. I'm like, yo, where the fuck did everybody go? What happened? Guys, you have a helicopter that flies people in the pool. Like, where you lost the girls? But turns out Kid Cudi and Leonardo DiCaprio were like right around the corner. And I look up and
girls,
I see a hat.
man. Oh, I'm so guilty.
Right. And then there were no more girls to be found. And I couldn't even serve Leonardo DiCaprio or Kid Cudi because it's just, you know, they do have a preference in women. P.S.
What's
Asian women. I don't know what type of Asian, but it was definitely. I don't know if that's just because it was like the smart convention. Like, I'm just being racist in that way, but
no, Asian people are smarter. It's gotta be. There's gotta be something there.
I'm sure
they have this little thing about them.
I've seen somebody spend $1 million in the club. I've seen a bottle get skydived into the club. I've seen a drone fly a bottle from like an airplane down. I've seen somebody, I'm pretty sure, die in the club. That was at a pool club. I won't say which one, but we had to hold, like, this body's on the ground and we were holding buzzers, and anybody around is holding towels up so that the guests can't see in. This guy's just on the floor, and our security guards had to take turns pumping at this guy's chest.
Oh my God.
And it was so long that I was tapped out. Like, I had to have somebody come hold my towel for me. I was like, yo, I can't fucking sit here and watch somebody die for the day, right? I gotta go. And so I had somebody else come stand in, and it ruined the whole day. Obviously, you don't never want to see that shit. And they put him in a wheelchair or a stretcher, and they kind of covered the guy up. And then at the end of the day, they said that he had a heartbeat and a pulse leaving the club. But I think that's just the rhetoric they use for that dude is toast. That was really dramatic. That was dramatic. That fucked me up for like a few weeks, you know. That was, I believe, during EDC, the Electronic Daisy Carnival. So you know that everybody's drugged out.
EDC.
Yeah. Drugs and alcohol the next day, probably not the best combo.
And heat.
Right. And heat, damn.
Man, I'm telling you.
That was a sad story. Can't end with this fucking shitty story.
No, let's not. We usually like to actually end the podcast with the positivity of coming out of the quarantine. And we are actually so much closer with these podcasts now.
Hell yeah.
I'd love to hear, like, what is something that you're looking forward to going back to? What is some kind of normalcy that you're like, Like, hell yeah. Like, I'm going to be able to go back to, like, I don't know. We've gotten someone who said they can't wait to travel again. And we got someone who said they can't wait to go to a bar and drink with his friends.
That's funny.
I want to hear yours.
For me, because I work at the bar, right? So that people will be there. I think I'm doing this podcast and coming out of quarantine. I really did miss my friends and the network, the connection. I don't know what I will look forward to more than just going back to work. Because if Vegas is opened, I feel like that's like the last step. Like that should signify things being okay.
Yeah.
So if we can get back to work at the pool, which, I mean, truthfully, who knows when that will be. That would be a good thing. But coming out of here, I just want to continue getting to talk to people that I otherwise, you just wait to see them. You wait to see them online. You wait to see them social media. You might catch them at the pools. You might work with them this year. I've enjoyed even this conversation. Like Sean and I, like, Doug, have we ever spoken on the phone before, ever?
No.
Precisely. So this type of stuff, I think as I come out of quarantine, I value more.
Yeah.
And, before we were all running around and shit, like hardly talking to each other. You just catch glimpses. We all got stuff to do.
Yep.
But now I think I'm going to try to consciously slow it down and see if I can continue doing stuff like this, talking to people and making connections this way rather than taking it for granted that I'll run into them.
Totally, man. Totally. Well, for everyone, and this will be up obviously, but again, his Instagram, stripped.LasVegas, and then on the podcast networks, it's stripped and then pool season, right?
Yes, sir. Stripped pool season kind of brings it up all over the place.
Yeah.
Or Stripped Las Vegas. I try to keep those three words
Yep.
together. Man, I appreciate you guys having me on here. Pam, it was a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, it was nice meeting you too.